is Mullai. I'm a food enthusiast.
Hi, I'm Ray, founder of Nuty.
Hi everyone, this is Vishu.
Okay, so let's talk about Nuty first. And Nuty is N-U-T-Y.
We are bringing the authentic food from India with a balance of flavors, which is also healthier. The first company to actually launch Indian food through high-pressure processing technology.
No artificial colors, no preservatives.
The biryani is the most popular Indian dish, right? So every region specializes in making biryani their own way. You have to get the right ingredients, and there's no shortcut to it. Microwave is probably the worst thing you can do to the food. Cold food is old food. The genius of these age-old recipes are not just they're tasty, they're good for you.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Robbie Lobby. My name is Mullai. I'm Robbie's friend. I'm a food enthusiast. So when Robbie told me that he's got friends from Nuty, I got curious and I thought it would be a great opportunity to talk about food, the restaurant industry, and the journey they've had coming here. So over to you guys.
Hi, I'm Ray, founder of Nuty.
Hi everyone, this is Vishu, part of Nuty. I'm from Australia, Melbourne.
Robbie wanted us to talk about our journey, and we bring in a very interesting perspective in terms of what we have done over the last 7 years of our journey in the food industry. Our journey has given us learnings which we would like to share, apart from the great food which we are putting out under a brand called SpiceX. It's called SpiceX.live. Go check it out. We got some great authentic Indian food in the Atlanta area.
And exciting offers on your DoorDash or UberEats and all those.
That's right. Yesterday we opened our second location in San Francisco. So we are super excited because we are bringing the authentic food from India, and that the authenticity comes with a balance of flavors, which is also healthier as opposed to something which is actually imbalanced.
Okay, so let's talk about Nuty first. And Nuty is N-U-T-Y.
Right.
So can you tell us what's behind the name and
yeah, definitely.
your origin?
When we were actually contemplating a name for the company, and me and my co-founder Naveen, we felt that DNA should actually reflect what we are trying to do, and the name should constantly remind us what we are attempting to do over the course of our business life. So nutrition is part of what we are going to do. So you're not going to forget that whatever you make has to be reasonably nutritious and tastier. And taste is so important because if you're not going to win over customers, and if it's not palatable, no matter how nutritious it is. So it is a balancing act. So Nuty stands for nutritious and tasty, and U has an umlaut. So it's pronounced U. So there we are. Nuty is a trademark, and in the US, it's actually a company name because of the genesis of the company is to actually look at an age-old recipes and how they've been consumed over hundreds of years and maintain that authenticity and bring it over to this generation without bastardizing based on geographies and accessibility to ingredients and spices. You're not compromising on that, but you're maintaining that to the greatest possible degree. So my personal journey through that in the food industry prompted me to go in the direction of creating a balanced diet, which I have come to realize is nutritious also, in addition to being tasty.
When you talk about being able to preserve the nutrition, the taste, and the authenticity of the recipe, how is that different from what, somebody else is doing in the food industry today?
So we are talking about prepared food. Correct. Prepared food. How do you extend the shelf life of prepared food? One of the most common ways to do that is to freeze it. As opposed to what we are trying to do is a high-pressure processing technology, which is something which offers the best advantage in terms of retaining the freshness. Now, frozen food, the other kinds of technology, such as heat-treated, these are two commonly used methods to extend shelf life, and you have a bunch of products in the supermarkets sitting on the aisles and either in the ambient condition or in the frozen area. And you may not find the high HPP or high pressure processed food other than beverages, which are cold pressed juices. And they're cold pressed because cold and beverages are a use case to determine how you can maintain that nutrition profile while extending the shelf life. Because you squeeze a fresh juice, if you're not going to have it within a day or within a few hours, and they don't know good, to keep it longer, you actually heat treat it or you add certain additives. This is what the orange juices you find traditionally in the supermarkets, but they don't really do much good for you. They don't offer that kind of a nutritional retention. Nutrient retention is a key operative word for us in our mission. Whatever we're going to do, how do we retain the nutrition? And in the part of retaining the nutrition, we actually also are ensuring the flavor profile of the freshly prepared food maintains. In other words, most of us have memories of eating homemade food, which reminds you of the nostalgia when it's used fresh produce, and it just brings you that flavor, and you don't get it elsewhere. The reason for that is because you cannot contain that freshness and lock it in. When you open up and you heat it, you don't get that feeling. And what our technology does, what we have done is created that way to retain the freshness and yet extend the shelf life.
Okay.
And we were one of the first companies to actually attempt this in the food space, and the first company to actually launch Indian food through high-pressure processing technology.
So is it some kind of special packaging that you have to do, or how do you store it?
So the technology as such involves preparing food the plain old-fashioned way. We don't actually influence anything to do in any of the culinary aspects of it other than enable large volume production. You can just produce the food. We don't suggest adding anything other than what the original recipe is. Zero.
No artificial colors, no preservatives.
Okay.
Yeah. No extra things to make that. Just keep it genuine. It's a chiller friendly packaging. Yeah. It's nothing to be frozen. Yeah. Just.
And it can just be refrigerated.
It needs to stay refrigerated. So post preparation, we actually pack the food, and that's sealed. And post preparation is when the technology kicks in. So there are aspects to what we actually do that differentiates and makes this technology work. So we have a patent in this, and this is a process that we have specialized over years.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that you have like almost 19 types of biryani that you are offering. What does it take from the very beginning to make biryani in your plant to take it to market?
Okay, where does it start? For making the biryani is the most popular Indian dish, right? So every region specializes in making biryani their own way. They get the local spices, they put it together, and they make their own concoction of fried rice. I can't use the word fried rice. This is biryani.
Yeah.
Okay, this differentiates because this has got so much depth in protein. And in India, the depth is there's nowhere in the world. Having spent some time in many countries, including China, I can actually I can say I'm not biased, but I would still say Indian food has probably the greatest depth other than Chinese. They just go so deep into the cuisine, and that's the age-old wisdom has been baked into that process. We had a hard, long look at biryanis and trying to understand where it is from and why they are so popular and how we can deconstruct it and reconstruct it in our facility. And we do so by sourcing exactly every possible ingredient that makes each of the biryani unique. So we don't actually compromise on that. We just wanted to maintain that authenticity, and we recognize they all add a little element to the flavor profile. So you want to bring something balanced, you got to do it the way that the age-old recipes have, which create that balanced food. So we went on the path of just deconstructing, understanding the ingredients. So we have a supply chain.
The history of where it's coming from, why they're using that ingredient, especially when you talk about located where the biryani coming from, there must be adding some ingredients which were rich in that particular state or place.
Yeah.
So if you look at AP, Andhra, where I'm coming from, we use green chilies a lot. We don't use hard spices. So there is a bit of story behind that. So it's in every state, every city, every place, they have their own biryani. So everyone has their own history, own story behind it. We research a bit about the history about that biryani, what kind of people eat, how we can make it better. And we do that from scratch, the ingredients. That's how we keep that rich flavors, what they've been using there for that particular biryani. So yeah, that's how we start. That's our basics. And then, yeah.
Halfway through my journey of biryanis, I was quite confident that we got most of the biryanis out. And I was starting to feel a little proud about what we have done. And then I was visiting him in Anandapur, and where we had a Nuty Haven, which is a highway kiosk where he established. And while I was visiting him, he was like, "Oh, you want to try local biryani? We call it Tadi Patri biryani." I was like, "Okay, here we go again. Something I don't know." So you have Chettinad deep down south, and you have Kerala, which has produces a Malabar biryani, and then you have Bangalore has Chennai Ambur, all these biryanis basically they bring in an element which resonates with people. So all these are rich flavors, and capturing them and providing to people was actually one of our mission. And how we do that is, one is to get all the primary ingredients right and get all the sourcing part of it. The supply chain plays a huge game, and this is the boring part of the business, right? So you have to get the right ingredients, and there's no shortcut to it. So we try to get the right ingredients. Then you let the skills of the chef who is from that region and let them loose. The ones who do best are the ones who hail from that region, because that's what they grew up eating. So this is something which we also go back and focus on, to have the creator chef, as we call it. It comes from that inspiration of eating that kind of cuisine. That is the level of passion and the expertise they bring in are a notch above the rest. We get them to break it down, and we take an approach where we actually measure things. There is a saying in Tamil, they say "Kaipako," just throw in what
salt to taste. The most dreaded when you people following recipes, salt to taste, or just eyeball it. And
So you just feel it is good.
Yeah.
Now the whole thing about feeling it, for me as an outsider, I don't have any culinary background, as you can clearly tell. It is when I say, okay, this is how you must put in, and it's a seasoned hand. I'm like, okay, I don't know what a seasoned hand is. My hand is nothing but seasoned, and I'm pretty clumsy, so I need to measure it. So we try to understand how much it goes in, what goes in, and when it goes in. So it's a combination of time, heat, temperature, and the proportion of ingredients, and then you actually run it through a process which we have an SOP for it, and we deconstructed that recipe and we actually apply it through a QA context. So the QA, as in the quality team, or the team that actually helps the chefs do. So the chefs have been elevated to the creator of the recipes, and the enablers are going to be the QA team, and so they implement what the chef's vision is, and without them having to really go through that process constantly, but rather they actually sit back and see how this biryani plays out when I'm making 100 kilos of it or 200 kilos of it. And
they just scale it.
And that is where we actually spend a lot more time trying to figure out how we can produce in larger batches. And so once we produce a biryani as per the authentic recipes, it then gets captured. So you make it, and within about a matter of less than 30 minutes or so of production, you actually have to bag it, and you lock the flavors in, and then it goes through a process called quick chilling. So we just drop down the temperature of the hot food down to bring it down from the perishable range to 0 to 5 degrees Celsius, or about 35 to 40 Fahrenheit. And that helps to reduce the pathogens. Once it goes through that part, then it goes through our high pressure processing chamber. The food is actually packed and sealed. We don't add any additional elements to the food. We don't touch anything to it. The integrity of the food remains intact. And the greatness about this technology is it actually keeps the nutrients intact also. And then it comes out and it goes to storage. And when in our restaurants, at the point of regeneration in the kitchen, we bring them together. And you bring them together, and that's when the magic happens. So we present it the way that it actually is made in the kitchen, freshly, right? So all of this process comes together when these biryani rice and the biryani masalas are again put together and presented on the plate to the customer.
And you had mentioned, so you're also supplying to restaurants. If somebody wants to order this from you, how do they go about it?
So we actually run or operate restaurant brands ourselves.
Okay.
So they go by name SpiceX, Live, and we are in Atlanta and in San Francisco now, and we are coming to multiple cities also. And so people can actually order online on DoorDash, and so we, wherever possible, we actually do work with restaurant partners.
Okay.
And but the idea here is to actually bring all the authentic biryanis under one roof. Yeah, there's a lot of that process in the kitchen is simplified, but by no means everything is completely out of the box. So it is the flavor profile, the authentic food, the flavor profiles are all intact, but the regeneration, as we call it, is a process that we do in the kitchen, and we actually bring it.
When you say regeneration, it's not just taking the food and putting it in the microwave. So there's also assembly.
We don't even use microwave. So microwave is probably the worst thing you can do to the food. To a greater extent, you should avoid microwaving the food. But again, we all do that because it's a shortcut to getting where you want to get. But we want to give our customers the best experience that they could get. We use steaming, not microwaving. So steaming allows us to actually maintain that nuanced flavors, and microwaving will destroy those flavors. And what we do with the steaming process retains the enzymes, and though it takes a little longer, the steaming process allows you to actually maintain that warmth and moisture, freshness.
Doesn't
bring back the flavors from the food out. Yeah, that's safe practice for us. Yeah, what we chosen. Yeah, we're keeping those shortcuts away. Yeah, helping the food to really come back to life. And so our foods compared to freshly cooked food, you cannot differentiate at all. Yeah, and it'll be as much as flavorful compared to what you cook and how much you put in there for it. So who concerned about the health? When I say regeneration, we have to use some oils or lemon juice, or we even balance that to maintain that, not to overdo it and still have that plating and all that.
There are 4 elements in organoleptic qualities. You have a smell, the taste, you have the visual appeal, and there is a texture. So you need to balance all these 4. And for a product, that's how we evaluate it. When we actually come up with the food, we compare it, we check the texture. Is the texture, how is it on a scale of 1 to 10? How does it rate compared to something that you actually just made fresh? For me, it is one of the experiences that what dawned upon me after this whole journey is I actually realized that I'm better off eating this food for my regular diet. So I actually, whenever I get a chance, eat our own food. And that's very hard for many restaurateurs to say that you would do that, because it's so well balanced, and whatever you're going to get is exactly as it is meant to be, from the calorific point of view as well as a culinary point of view. So that is what drives us to be passionate about what we do, because it's always a part of our lives.
It's the convenience and being able to meet the nutritional and taste.
Absolutely, yeah.
Why do you think is it hard I think that, like what you mentioned right now, right? You go out to eat. That's something, all of us like to go out. The way we celebrate is with food. We go out to eat with friends, with family, for anything, anywhere. Everything.
The food is the person. Coffee, food, this is all. Yeah.
But a lot of times, like what you said, after you eat, you feel like maybe that was a bit too much of this, too much of that. But why? And you said, why is that so common today in restaurants? That why are they not catering?
If you look at the commercial foods, you go out, you want a good food because you've been focusing more on the health side of you. And then when you step out with your family, friends, or gatherings, you want something exciting on your plate, regardless how healthy it is or not. So you'll go grab it, eat it, and then you're going to enjoy that moment. And halfway through, after all, you might regret, you'll have the after effects. I wouldn't say everywhere, but you might, most likely. So we focus on that. We focus on that you enjoy our food, and we make sure there wouldn't be any after effects. Your stomach will be happy for the next day. Or
is it they inherently difficult? Is it not, why do restaurants do that?
Look, it's a practice for most of the restaurants that they plan the pre-production planning for every food. I've seen a restaurant the other day, for example, in our area. They're carrying 159 items on their menus. If a restaurant is carrying that many foods, you can think, will they do that many items every single day from scratch? No way. It's not possible.
And they have to bring the food out in 15 minutes? Or what is it typical?
Absolutely. It's about max is 25 minutes.
25 minutes?
25 minutes. If it is delivery, which is similar, and the customer has to receive by 45 minutes if he's sitting home. So you can imagine, to carry that many items on the menu, they has to have a shortcut. So this thing will be planned as a weekly basis. So the food cannot be made again freshly.
Okay.
So there has to have a pre-production plan. Every 3 days, 4 days, they work on a particular items.
Okay.
Or a particular cuisine. So that's where they put in a lot of, for example, oils, colors, keep the food shelf life longer. Obviously, when you go to a restaurant, you like one food and your friend want to order something else. So restaurant has to carry that many to attract bigger crowds and families. And so that's where we get that kind of food nowadays.
Yeah, it's a great question about the biryanis, which is a frequent cause of Delhi belly.
Yeah.
And I got one of the most interesting feedback from a chauffeur of one of my family members who were visiting, and I offered him, and he was food, and I took it out of the fridge, and he looked at me with a bit of a skepticism. So I heated and I had, and after he started eating, his face changed, and it was like, oh, this is great. And that was, until that point, it was quite common to get that kind of feedback. But then again, because it's a surprise element for them, because they had a low expectation, so I always think it's because, you had a lower expectation now because it's packaged food, and it's cold food is old food. And that a lot of us do carry that bias. So we continue to carry that bias, either by experiences or mostly by experiences, and rightfully, I agree.
I think it's also in India, one of the problems is because of the weather or the way the fridges don't work the same way. You can leave something for refrigerators here in the United States for days, it'll be fine. Weather conditions. But in India, if you leave coconut meat even for a day, it's,
for a few hours, actually, 4 or 5 hours.
It's not fresh.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. These are all primary reasons why you have food-related discomforts. Indian food is so highly perishable, except for maybe the masala. So you try to make them overpowering, and you make it imbalanced in many ways. And so you extend the shelf life. It naturally lasts for longer. Either it has a lot of sugar in it, or it has a lot of spices in it, and spices with preservatives or oils, for example. So you're finding ways that you could actually make it last for longer. And in the process, you're losing out on the freshness of it. We didn't really start out as, we're going to make the healthiest biryani. But we just followed the simple recipes, which they said, which our chefs' moms have actually been cooking for them, and they're like, we're going to make our homemade biryani stuff, and it came out to be healthier. Now then, that's a light bulb moment, right? But that biryani is incredibly difficult to maintain a shelf life. You, in a restaurant that makes breakfast at 6 in the morning, you make chutneys, and some of the greens, they spoil very quickly. And how do you actually just make this biryani and then maintain that freshness for longer? You have to make it in frequent batches, constantly, and which is almost impossible unless it is a very large restaurant with a high footfall. And in most restaurants in the United States, they don't really have that many customers coming in like in India. So you're left with making biryanis in smaller batches, or you make it once a day or once a few days. Straight through it. Okay. Now, how does it differentiate from what we are doing is we do not reheat the food. See, that we actually prepare the food once, and we actually keep it in a state where it stays intact in chilled, and then when we heat it only once, and you don't reheat the food. So it is, if any chef will tell you, if you prepare the food and you heat it again, heated once and then cool it again, it just loses its flavor. So the biryanis come out, for most people who actually say biryanis are unhealthy, you got to try our biryanis and you would know why it is healthier, because the portion sizes are exactly they are supposed to be. So we are actually serving about 450 grams to under 500 grams. So it's not inflated, bloated, big box of food. Portion sizes is not how we are winning customers. We are winning customers with a quality product. Your body is the greatest indicator of how the food is. So once your tongue settles in, it's done your job tricking you to do what it does. And later you start listening to the price. Or you should listen to your body. At that time is you listen to your body. And we got some of the best feedback from people who, for example, Chris from Seattle. In Seattle, too.
We had a few biryanis that we had done that regenerated and cooked, and we kept it there for tasting. So there were a few guys there. They were restaurateurs. So they had a bit of knowledge about the food and stuff, but they never tasted Indian food. And we had a few biryanis for locals, Americans. Butter chicken biryani.
Okay.
We had a Nuty style biryani. We had a Lucknowi biryani. We had a Done biryani. And we were thinking like, obviously American, they would like a butter chicken biryani and something flavorful. No way. So these guys, they had all, and they would just keep going back to Done, which is very regional, very strongly aroma flavors, and with spice levels high too. And they would just keep going back, and we asked them, what do you guys like, butter chicken or what do you like? And they're like, no, we like Done. And we were so surprised because that's completely a local, where it's coming from India.
It's a very foreign flavor. They haven't tried anything like that, but they instantly liked it. So people just need to experience it. The genius of these age-old recipes are not just they're tasty, they're good for you. And majority of them, especially dating back to 50, 100 years old recipes, people have been consuming that for generations. How could they have gone wrong eating that? So now we are just doing a simple job, which is to capture it and bring it back. So for instance, I was blown away when I realized there are a whole range of white rice which is low glycemic. The glycemic index defines how quickly you react to the food if it just hits your spot. And you like the food that actually, and biryanis does hit the spot and it spikes your glycemic index. By replacing some of the strains of the high glycemic carbs with the low glycemic carbs, we brought out the same flavor with a healthier twist. So it's just knowing what actually is causing that unhealthy or not so healthy reaction in your body is critical to understanding. And because we deconstructed the ingredients, so it becomes easier for us to see, okay, this is a culprit here, or this is, if by switching this ingredient, you're able to. So we did that in the process of creating a whole line of gut-friendly food.
Okay.
And all our gut-friendly food has a high fiber content and it has low GI. So you could still eat food, flavorful food, and you're not compromising just because you're eating something healthier. It's not any less flavorful. So I think in many ways, just by altering the diet, what we have understood in our journey is it's possible to actually get that gut-friendly food. We have a line of gut-friendly products which we would want to introduce to the market, and we want to bring it out. But again, there is this thing about sustainability of the business, which we have to take into account. So it's not for the lack of gut-friendly food. In San Francisco, you have, in the late 90s, there was a food revolution in terms of fresh food revolution, which brought upon the awareness of eating healthier food. And my time there has actually opened me eyes to vegan diet to a great deal, and I found benefits on that for some time as well. It's just nothing is as good as flexitarian, just eat it, and how much to eat. As every culture, what prompted me to look into food industry was, as like many people, I went through some challenges. I was eating indiscriminately, as in without any understanding of what food can do to you. I was in tech, and food to me is just a pure function and a joy. So you just consume what you consume, and and at one point my body just gave up and said, hey, you know what, I can't deal with you anymore. And then I had to visit a gastroenterologist and who spent some time to kindly look into my eating habits and tell me that I'm actually abusing my body in terms of what I eat, and from red meats to greasy food. And so I cleaned up the diet, and then in the process I was wondering why I was eating that, and it was something that ever since I have always had a curiosity. I developed a natural curiosity towards food because it was able to disrupt my functioning, and it had the power to interrupt me doing what I'm doing. When I spoke to people around me, very few of them had an understanding of what it is. And looking at the journey of what most people have gone through, I realized that chronic poor eating habits are the major cause of what transpires in your later years. And if at all that could be controlled, people can actually have much greater lives. They could get the best out of their life. And so that prompted me to look into the food industry as such. And then we understood the problem statement with the restaurant industry, which is what I was dependent on for a very long time back in Australia and in the US, and eating out. And then I understood that they are actually operating in a way that actually has very less focus on health, and
they're not looking out for you. That's true. Not just restaurant, even the food industry. It's all about shelf life, their profitability, how to make it addictive, so you're going to grab that box again. So they're not looking out for you when they put something up.
Yeah, so they don't, but then again, I don't know what I'm looking for also. So I had to start with myself. So first I need to understand how. I had to understand about how food reacts in my body. So I went through a process of elimination diet. So this was about 15 years ago in the early 2000s. So I started this mid-2000s, and I started spending time trying to eliminate different diet groups that I've been eating to understand how it reacts, and I zeroed in on lactose. But at that point I realized I could be lactose intolerant, and I also was worried because lactose milk was a major part of what I actually made, from meat to everything. So it was a very hard choice, and I was taking the lactate and still consuming like cheese and wine, and just letting it go was one of the best things I could have ever done. Letting it go, and I was worried at one point I would never be able to eat, but it was just a mindset. It's like I had a gastroenterologist. She was, in fact, she was my therapist at some point, and she was like, okay, you know what, you could survive without eating this, you know that, right? And I was like, okay, I don't know that yet, but I will try. And I tried, and I could do well without many of the stuff that I've been putting. So that is very interesting what you just brought about. So in this case, you knew this thing was not doing well for you. But in spite of that, when it comes to food, it's so difficult to change something or stop eating, because I think there's so many emotional or other things that happens when you eat a food, that it's very difficult to, unlike if you go and touch a fire, you know it's going to hurt you, you're not going to do it, right? But I've heard a lot of people tell this, I'll take lactate and then I'll have my cheese, I'll have my pizza. It's very hard to have eating habits that even agree with us. Even if it doesn't agree with us, we want to override that. So it's psychology to a great extent. It is what they call dependency. So you have your dependencies. So you have your urges. You have your dependency. So you just need to balance it. You need to relook at the things and say, okay, I'm dependent on this. Now, I need to replace it with something else. Now, the fascinating part of what I learned when I did my endoscopy, and it was like, okay, you don't have the lactase layer at all. You have 0 out of 10. So I was pretty much said you should stay away from anything remotely dairy. I did follow that for several months or a year, and then I accidentally consumed dairy, and it was fine. I was like, wow, did I just eat dairy? So when I went back, I spoke to her, and she was like, oh, you said it's lactase, once it is gone, it cannot be inhibited. And she was like, I was wrong. we learn a lot of things about body. So you stay out of you eliminate that diet group, you can bring it back in moderation. So the same thing to a large extent applies with gluten also to extent. I mean, people just completely stay away from that. So whole foods is a good concept, but to overdo any of that, the body will send a signal. So I mean, most of us are not paying attention to that signals. And then when you do pay attention to it, and just by reorienting yourself in terms of access and reach.
The way I see it, food industry is going to change drastically in the next 10-20 years, merely because people are more about paying attention to not just protein.
Right.
They want to get the greens. They want to get, for all, it can get to a place where everything is like either in a powder form or something that can be reconstituted.
Yeah.
And nobody has the time to cook or the patience to cook.
They want shortcuts.
They want shortcuts, but they want it to be nutritious, which is today that is not happening. There are shortcuts, but it's definitely not. But I think the next generation will demand for more nutritious. So I think food industry is one thing that's going to change a lot for the next generation.
Right. I'm very optimistic about that. People are actually, there's a greater awareness than before. So there are secular trends that are heading in that direction. And which is why we make it our mission to make great, authentic food affordable and
accessible
to people. And that's the key here, affordability and accessibility. And everybody wants to try the good thing. What I learned is they probably don't have the access to it, or sometimes it is too expensive. So we address those two things. We are democratizing authentic Indian food and not just Indian food. We are actually also looking at the Chinese food as well. And so we want to put out some of the best food. So my vision or our mission here is to actually get people eat healthier food.
Okay.
I would love to see people eating healthier food, flavorful food, and go through the experience of what I've gone through. So democratizing Indian food is our primary mission.
Okay.
Authentic Indian food.
Where they can bring their memories back from wherever they are from. And we are bringing all kind of recipes, all kind of foods from different states, bringing that authenticity to the market. Yeah.
And in the process, you discover a lot of different regions and the stories about these regions where it originated from. So learning through food is a journey I went through, and I would love to actually have as many people participate in that.
Good luck to you guys.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to see more of Nuty and products in our region as well.
Absolutely.
Looking forward. Thank you.
Thank you.